The 13th's rejoining flooded its shard with darkness, twisting inhabitants into Voidsent. This fracture wasn't accidental, it was inevitable. A primal stirs beneath the ethereal sea. The 12's fate was sealed not by sacrifice, but by a pact forgotten. Why did the reflection fall? But a beginning inhabitants into Voidsent, but in design. What if the 13th's fall wasn't an end, but a beginning? The reflection's collapse wasn't a shield, it was a threshold. By letting the Voidsent devour their form, they didn't seal the void. They invited it, a bridge, not a barrier. The source bled not from sacrifice, but from a wound deliberately opened. The 12 didn't die defending light. They drowned in a tide they couldn't see coming. Every hymn of heroism cracks under one truth. The 13th sacrifice gave the void a foot in the door, a calculated surrender. A pact with no promise. The source's collapse wasn't prevented, it was primed. The question remains, what did the 13th gain by turning the reflection into a gateway, and who paid the price when the void answered? The 13th did not seal the reflection, they unraveled it. The convocation of 14, keepers of Aetheri's balance, had long feared the void's encroachment. When the Ascians forced a rejoining, the 13th saw not annihilation, but leverage. To fracture Aetheri's was to fracture the source's defenses. The reflection became a conduit, not a shield. What did the 13th gain? A bridge for the void to seep into the fabric of existence. Who paid the price? The 12, bound to a fate they could not foresee. The LP's paradox whispers of a pact unfulfilled. The 13th's final act was no surrender, it was a pivot. By fracturing the reflection, they invited the Voidsent, a tide the convocation could not contain. Encyclopedia Erzia Roman 3 notes the Ascians' obsession with rejoinings, yet omits the 13th's role in twisting that ambition. The fallen reflection was never meant to fall, it was meant to open, a betrayal, yes, but not of the 12, of the plan itself. The 13th gambled that the source's collapse would force the void to reveal its true form. Instead, it birthed the final days. The convocation's governance, once absolute, crumbled under the weight of their own foresight. What remains is a paradox. The 13th sacrifice was the first domino. The 12's deaths were not failure, they were inevitability, and the void, it waited. The sky bled indigo, not the deep, regal hue of twilight, but a bruise-thick smear of corruption, seeping through the fractures in Aetheri's veil. Encyclopedia Erzia Roman 3 calls it the first descent moment. The 13th's rejoining became a wound, not a healing. What was meant to stitch the shard's fractured soul instead yanked open a seam, and through it slithered the void's first breath. The air reeked of burnt honey, sweet and cloying, as if the light had been charred into poison. The LP's paradox does not name the 13th a traitor, it need not. Its equations, etched in ash on the ruins of the first altar, show the rejoining's geometry was inverted, a bridge, not a seal. The 13th's final acthi's so-called sacrifice was a misdirection. They did not surrender to the 12, they surrendered asterisk to the gap between asterisk. A miscalculation or a hidden truth, the paradox offers no verdict, only the cold math of inevitability. Beneath the poison light, the shard's denizens contorted. Bones splintered, reshaping into jagged spires. Eyes multiplied, pupil-less and hungry. The Voidsent did not howl. They hummed, a vibration in the marrow, as if the shard itself had learned to weep in frequencies the living could not hear. The 12, bound in their celestial thrones, knew the rejoining's failure was no accident. They knew the 13th had not betrayed them in malice. They had betrayed the asterisk truth, asterisk the fragile, unspoken hope that Aetheri's could remain untouched. The shard's collapse was not a tragedy. It was a revelation. The void was never an invader. It was an answer to a question no one had dared ask. And still the paradox whispers, what use is a bridge if not to be crossed? The paradox does not whisper in vain. The 13th's fall split the sea of Durac like a blade. What if the reflection's collapse was not a wound but a key? The Ascians did not wait for the 12 to act. They wove the rejoining into the fabric of the war for the Sorcia forced merger, not a final act. The Book of the 12 hints at this. The 13th's sacrifice aligns too neatly with the void's design, a bridge built to crumble. A chain broken to be reforged. The 12 believed they sealed a traitor, they sealed a lever. The rejoining was no accident. It was the first stone cast into the lake, ripples shaping the storm to come. The 13th's light did not fade, it fractured. A prism bent by unseen hands. To call it betrayal is to name the tide a crime. The Ascians needed the source to bleed. The 13th became the cut. What remains is a truth colder than void. The fallen was never the hero, never the villain, only the hinge. The book's pages turn, the paradox hums. Did the 13th choose the Ascians, or did the Ascians choose the 13th? The question is not who pulled the string, it is who saw the string there at all. The Ascians speak of necessity. They claim the 13th's rejoining was a scalpel, not a wound, a cut to avert the final day's rot. Garlean scholars scoff. To them, the 13th's collapse is a wound left to fester, proof of leadership's failure to hold the line. Charlatan skeptics dismiss both. They call it myth, a tale spun by those who fear what they cannot quantify. But the LP's paradox does not whisper, it roars. The rejoining's fracture did not seal Aetheris, it tore it open. A door, not a tomb. Fandaniel's return is no coincidence. It is the echo of that door's opening. The void did not enter because the 13th fell. It entered because the 13th asterisk chose asterisk to fall. To let the fracture widen, to let the balance break. The 12's deaths were not an accident, they were the price of a gambit. A gambit whose end game still burns in the skies. The Ascians call it salvation, the Garleans call it surrender, the skeptics call it nothing. But the void knows what it was, a pact forged in ash, a betrayal written in the stars, and the final days. They were never meant to be stopped, only delayed, until the 13th's shadow became the world's. The final days bled into myth as dynamis tore through the veil. Cities dissolved into screaming ash, time fractured like glass. You remember the taste of iron in the air, the way shadows whispered promises in the dead. The 13th's reflection did not fall, it unmade itself, a key turning in the void's lock. How many lives unraveled before the 12 saw the truth? The stars dimmed, but their light was never the point. Venat's voice faint as a dying breath, asterisk, we were the thread, not the knot. Asterisk, in the unraveling it was always meant to outlast them. The unraveling does not pause, it breathes. The LP's paradox, that fragile bridge of light, is no sanctuary, it is a door left ajar in the void's storm. The 13th's fall was not a rupture but a pivot, a fulcrum in a cycle older than the first. The Scions' wars, the Ascian schemes, the final day's return, all are echoes of a pattern carved into the bones of the cosmos. Love, that stubborn technology, flickers in the void like a dying star's last pulse. It outlives the source, outlives the 12, but the 13th's hand ensured the collapse. Their betrayal was not malice, it was arithmetic. In Pandemonium's final cutscene, the camera lingers on a shattered constellation, or relic of the Allagan Empire's fall. The same pattern repeats, a god's surrender, a world's end, the cycle's gears grinding forward. The 13th sacrifice was a surrender to the inevitable, a calculated step to accelerate the collapse. The source, that wellspring of creation, shudders under their touch. Its light fractures into prismatic dust, swallowed by the void's hunger. No heroism here. Only the weight of a thread pulled too tight. The Scions' struggle is a shadow play. Every battle against the Ascians, every plea for redemption, is a performance staged on a set already burning. The 13th's betrayal was not an aberration, but a necessity, a bridge for the void to cross, a key to unlock the next iteration of the cycle. The 12's deaths are not tragic ends but scheduled resets. Their names fade into the static between worlds, their legacies reduced to footnotes in an equation written in starlight and ash. What does love, that persistent technology, become in the void? A whisper, a ghost, a spark buried under eons of darkness. The 13th's final act was not to save, but to severto, let the cycle turn. And still the question lingers. If the cycle is unbroken, if the unraveling is eternal, can even love's embers escape the math of inevitability? The 13th did not fall, they folded. By letting the Voidsent devour their reflection, they carved a conduit for the void to breach the source. The LP's paradox reveals this as a calculated surrender, not a martyr's end. The rejoining was no accident, it was a gambit. The 12's collapse was the price for a future the Ascians alone could claim. The ledger closes here. The 13th's sacrifice was a betrayal. Their shadow became the key, the source shattered. Aetheri's waits, no blade was drawn, no plea was made. The 13th's pact was silent, written in the hollow where their reflection once burned. The Voidsent's hunger was not an attack, it was an invitation. A door swung open, the void, starved and ravenous, poured through. The source, unprepared, buckled. The 12, bound to its fate, followed. The paradox does not name the 13th's guilt, but it etches their choice in the math of collapse. A surrender, yes, but to what? To the Ascians' design, to the slow, inevitable rejoining of a world and its shadow. The 13th's end was not a wound. It was a thread pulled, the fabric unravels, the cycle turns. And still the question lingers, if the cycle is unbroken, if the unraveling is eternal, can even love's embers escape the math of inevitability? Word count 281. The 13th's blade did not sever the source, it severed trust. 5 years after the 7th umbral calamity, the Scions walk a path paved with unasked questions. The fallen reflection's end was no sacrifice. It was a door left ajar, a choice to let the void in. The warrior of light feels it first as a weight in the chest, a truth colder than any umbral tide. The source's unraveling was not fate's script, but a single actor's rewrite. The 12's deaths were not the war's natural end, they were its afterthought. The 13th's pact with the void did not save the future. It shaped it. Now the Scions fight not to prevent a collapse that was always coming, but to unmake one that should never have been. Every strike against the calamity is a strike against a shadow cast by betrayal. Grief is not just for what was lost. It is for what could have been. The Scions carry this. Their hands tremble with the knowledge that the cycle they chase is not ancient. It is new, a scar still bleeding. The warrior of light learns, to break a chain, you must first see where it was forged. Where the links were bent, where the key was hidden in the lock all along. The past is not a ghost, it is a wound. And the 13th's name is etched in its edges. The wound pulses, a bridge of shattered light arcs from the LP's paradox's ink-stained pages, its threads woven with the 13th's breath. You can taste its iron and ozone where the void's door yawned open. No hero's pyre here, only a key turned backward, unmaking the source's heart. The Scions' hymns call it a rejoining, the dust knows better. Beneath the archive of 12, the bridge still hums, its pillars are bones. Its foundation, a name erased. To walk it is to feel the source's breath leave your lungs, to watch the stars dim like dying embers in a child's hand. The LP's paradox does not say *y*, it only records the price, 12 constellations smudged from the sky, their light swallowed by the 13th shadow. A shadow that did not fall, it folded. Love is the last thing the 12 left behind. It clings to the Scions' blades, to the whispered oaths they carve into their palms. They fight the cycle, but the battle is a mirror. Every strike echoes the 13th's choice, every victory tastes of ash. The paradox is not in their defeat, it is in the memory. The 12 remember, the 13th does not, and yet the bridge remains, a scar across time. You can hear it in the archive's silence, the creak of splintering wood where the 13th stood, their back to the void, their face turned toward the source. No scream, no blaze of glory, just the quiet of a door closing, a surrender that was not a surrender. The Scions will never cross that bridge. To do so is to become the wound, to become the name etched in its edges. The LP's paradox ends with a line no scholar dares to read aloud. Remember us. Not a command, a plea. The 12's voices, faint as dying fireflies, trapped in the bridge's marrow. The 13th's answer is written in the void's hunger. A candle burns. Its flame is not a hero's light, it is a thread in the bridge, it is a wound, it is a door. Remember us. Was the 13th sacrifice a betrayal? The Scions' ledger is open. In the war for the source, their final act splits truth from shadow. Was it surrender or a gambit etched in ash? Share what you believe. What would you have done when the cost is a god's breath and the price is 12 lives? The comments cradle your answers.